Hello everyone, Fara here. Today we're going to talk about carriers. Surprise, surprise, but specifically carriers in competitive. Tier 8 and more importantly Tier 10, and how WarGaming has, as I'm sure you're all aware, decided not to include Tier 10 carriers in the Tier 10 clan wars. So with further ado, let's go and read their statement, shall we? Here we can have basically the official post, and the general principle here is simple. Carriers are excluded for primarily a number of reasons. This is WarGaming's reasoning, that carriers offer very good spotting anywhere on the map. It allows concentrated fire on isolated targets. It's difficult for small clans because not necessarily everyone has like a really good carrier player because they have such a large impact in the game. They offer perfect recon. They're an obstacle to destroyers. Everybody sees everybody's game mechanic, as we're reading here. There are a few tier 10 carriers, i.e. 2. The Hakuryu and the Midway, they're hard to learn. And the CVs primarily aren't doing anything other than just reconnaissance. And the problem is, at least as they say it, all ships are spec'd anti-air in their most anti-air setup, which overloads and exhausts the carrier player as he attempts to micro and gameplay to basically provide sight for his team and deny sight for the enemy team. Okay, so that's WarGaming's kind of logic reasoning behind taking it out. So today I want to talk about what happens. So the rebuffs to the reasoning of taking carriers out and my mentality for keeping them in. What's going to happen if you take the carriers out of competitive, because it's going to have knock-on effects. It's not just the fact you take away the carriers, it's going to be a completely different setup of ships and modules and all that type of thing. And what classes will be taken. And then theoretically, if you were going to take carrier, how would you set it up for tier 10 competitive meta? And some comparisons with tier 10s and tier 8s, okay? So, for a little bit of disclosure, I was part of Omni, I still am in Omni, but my point is Omni took part in the CCT, that's the closed clan testing. So we were one of the clans that did internal testing, so we kind of know what we're talking about because we've already experimented with this. And while there's an NDA stating I can't talk about what specifically we tested, I think it's safe to say that Omni generally, and a number of other clans as well, who I'm not going to speak for, are not exactly thrilled about this change, because we feel that you're taking away an element of the game and you're admitting that the carriers are broken or it doesn't work. And it's the same with the principle of only allowing one battleship. Okay, so let's go into the details. Yes, a carrier can spot. Yes, it's difficult for new clans to get really good players, and yes, a carrier can dominate the influence of a battle, and it's very, very important. But it feels that WarGaming is balancing clan wars for the masses rather than balancing the game mode for the top players, or the top teams, or just balancing the game around good skill. So for example, if there's a balance pass or a change in other games such as StarCraft, such as League of Legends or whatnot, the principle I'm trying to get here is that the balancing is done on the very top-end players. If the top-end players have discovered a new system to play and it's very powerful, but only the top-end players can exploit it, the whole game will be balanced around that top-end play, and that filters back down. That's the way how they go about and do it. And I'm actually quite a fan of that, because balancing on the best players is better than balancing on potatoes, because it totally skews the top-end competitive scene out of whack if you're balancing at the lowest common denominator. All right. So, one of the differences between Tier 8 and Tier 10 that you guys might not be aware of in competitive environments, from my experience playing in the competitive scenario, is that a Tier 10 plane will die faster to Tier 10 anti-air, the time till kill, the number of seconds, than it does playing a Tier 8 plane against Tier 8 anti-air. The Tier 10 AA ranges are higher, greater. Overall, there's greater distance, specifically the Moskva, and if you've got Minotaur, the AA range is up to 8.6 kilometers, which is another boost on top of the 7.2 that you get at the tier 8 meta, okay? The damage is a lot higher, and with the defensive fire triggers, the waves die instantaneously. But the other problem is that the air detection range for these ships, specifically not the Moskva, but other ones, is actually really, really small. For example, the Minotaur is really stealthy. And a number of other ships like destroyers are also very stealthy. Gearing's AA, it can be really, really high, and they have a defensive fire as well. The point I'm trying to get at here is that there's a lot of the detection range of the ships hasn't changed. So the planes still have to get within the same amount of distance to see in terms of spotting, but the anti-air range has increased, and as a result, the kill zone for planes is a lot higher, and the time to kill a plane is significantly less. So it's much more stressful as a tier 10 going after just trying to do your job. So Wargaming has a point in that because you're playing carrier in a recon sense with everyone else having AA setups, it can be overloading, exhausting. I wouldn't really call it overloading and exhausting. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's challenging, which is, I guess, for me personally, I know I'm kind of super unicum. It's good. I enjoy that challenge. I enjoy the challenge of playing with the AA or trying to dodge or not get caught out or picking out targets or dominating the enemy carrier or working with my team's AA and my planes to block out the enemy CV. And there's a game within a game. There's the air game, there's the ground or sea game, so there's a lot going on there. So that's one of the big differences between the 8 and 10 meta, is that the AA is so heavily in focus. If you go AA spec, it's really, really, really lethal to carriers. It's very difficult to play compared to other tiers. Now, what's going to happen if you take away carriers? Okay, well, I'll tell you from some of my observations what's probably going to happen. A number of the captain skills are no longer necessary. You don't need to take advanced fire training. You no longer have to take manual fire control for AA armament. You don't need to necessarily maybe take basic fire training. You don't need to take a number of these skills. In the ship setup, you don't need to take increased gun range, AA range, or AA damage in the ship modules either. You don't have to take defensive fires. So what I'm trying to get at here is that, and I'll show you on my Hindenburg, because I have one tier 10 that might be good, and I'll talk about what tier 10 ships could be useful. This Hindenburg is exceptionally vulnerable to planes in its current setup. For example, the captain does not have advanced fire training, does not have basic fire, does not have manual fire for AA in the tier 10 meta. No, I have RPF, and I have vigilance, and I still have 2 points left over, which may go into turret rotation or something, but you get the principle here. I have RPF, so with another RPF ship we can triangulate a target, and I have vigilance for torpedo detection. And in terms of module setup, well, I've got hydro because there's no need for defensive fire anymore, and then I don't need a catapult fighter either. I can go with a spotting aircraft to increase the range. So these are completely different ways of playing the Hindenburg. Now, when you have a team of 7 versus 7, and that's just the Hindenburg, imagine the Des Moines that has the hydro, the Des Moines has the radar, the Des Moines doesn't have the defensive fire because it doesn't need it, or the Moskva has the radar and it has a hydro. I'm not actually too sure if the Moskva can have hydro, but you get the principle I'm getting here. You don't need the defensive fires, you can swap that out. So in a team of 7 versus 7, you will have a perpetual hydro for the whole game, because if you play as a group, or even if you play 2 separate groups, one guy hydros, the other one's on cooldown. With vigilance on top of that, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be torpedoed. And with double RPF, you'll be able to focus on, I see a ship in this direction, I see a ship in that direction. You can triangulate the coordination so you know where the destroyers are, so you can destroyers go and spot them. Or if the poor bastard, pardon my language there, goes into your radar range, with Moskvas, you can, or Des Moines, depending on the range, you can bounce one radar and another radar. And because you don't need to take AA skills, you can have either additional smoke generator, or if you know, other type of things. You can also have the radar duration increase. That increases the radar, for example, in the Minotaur, I believe, up to 55 seconds. But you just imagine everyone speccing into skills that increase the hydro, increase the radar. The detectability is almost as cancerous as if it was with a carrier. In terms of what ships would be good, well, the single battleship is almost always going to be a Conqueror. The Conqueror's one weakness is air, and that is gone. So now you're going to have a super stealthy slash high ability to heal battleship that's like the best cruiser in the game. And then in terms of cruisers, it's probably going to be Hindenburg, Des Moines, or Moskva, because these are cruisers that bring something to the game. It's probably going to be Des Moines and Moskva more than anything else. Raiders, hydros, and really good damage per minute. The Hindenburg might get in with its one hydro, but it doesn't have a radar, so it might be a bit of a niche ship, but it does bring, you know, the German hydro to the field, and it has pretty good AP and, you know, HE into itself. You'll probably find that the Zao, the Minotaur, and the Henry don't, at least in the top end, don't get selected because they don't bring anything to the table, but this is almost irrelevant even with a carrier, although you might see Minotaurs being brought in due to their stealthiness and their anti-air to deal with a carrier, but that's not the case anymore. In terms of destroyers, well, the Shimakaze is bad in that it doesn't have good long-range duration smokes, it only has torpedoes, everything is going to have hydro and vigilance, and it's going to be, it's just going to be so terrible to detect. Sorry, you know, it's going to be so terrible to actually make any meaningful impact because everything's going to be seen well in advance. In terms of destroyers, you'll probably find that the gearing, with its good kind of guns and long duration smoke, will be favoured over something like the Kabaros, because the Kabaros, once it's seen and being and revealed itself and firing, everything will just nail into it and shoot at it. And if it tries to smoke up, then you might find that a radar, long-range radar from the Moskva or something will pick up, and everybody will just fire on it. So it's probably the better functionality from the gearing comes in, or the Z52 from the Germans, because it's another hydro. It makes it... taking the carriers away means that everybody can go hydro, everybody can go vigilance, everybody can go long duration radar. You can change your certain ships in certain ways. I hope it doesn't degrade into one cancerous setup, one best setup that's in the game at the moment, and there's no flexibility. I'd be very surprised if anyone takes anything but a Conqueror. Why would you want to in its current setup? Yes, it's powerful, but without carriers, it's ridiculously powerful. Yeah, so there you go. Permanent rotation of hydro radar. The captain's guild has been repurposed for RPF. The ship class is specified. Now, if in some weird fantasy you were going to use tier 10 carriers in a competitive environment, what would you do with it? Well, the Hakuryu would probably go 4-2-2 because it's more about air control. You're not actually going to get that kind of level of bombing in with the torpedo bombers and that because, as I said, the anti-air is ridiculously heavy. So you would be going air control with the 4 fighters. But interestingly enough, the Midway at 302 is actually very good because the Midway aircraft capacity at 136 units compared to the Hakuryu's 100 units, the Midway already has far more planes in reserve. Plus, if you change to 302 on the Midway, the fighters and waves are big, they're very tanky, the strafe damage is huge, so it's very difficult for the Hakuryu 4 versus 3, but the waves are very powerful and you're going to be using your strafe mechanics. Plus, with no torpedo bombers, you've got 136 planes split purely over fighters and dive bombers on the Midway. So the dive bombers can be used in a sort of RNG, maybe try and hit a destroyer or it kind of summon away from the group because its planes will melt as well due to the AA, or you can use it in the spotting role against the enemy team. So you've got 2 spotting ships and 3 powerful air control denial ones, and you have planes for days. Because the tier 10 bracket is so incredibly hostile to planes, having that extra reserve in the Midway actually makes it somewhat competitive and viable. The Hakuryu, however, 422, it doesn't have the plane reserve. If the game goes long or if there's an incredibly hostile anti-air and you start losing plane attritions, you will run out of planes quite quickly, so you have to be quite careful. But it does have 2 sources of flooding from torpedo bombers. It has 2 sources of fire from dive bombers. It can scout with the 2 dive bombers as well as, for example, the Midway can, but it has ability to cross-drop and flood with the torpedo bombers. But the AA is incredibly dangerous in an organized 7 versus 7 at tier 10. So it's kind of a trade, like what do you go with? But what's interesting to me is that both are viable, which is interesting because you don't get that tier 8. It's only Shikaku at tier 8 running 3-1-2 and sometimes 2-2-2 depending on the team composition. I was really excited about the tier 10 meta, even though how broken it is with anti-air, the fact that we could pick between these 2 ships depending on our game plan from a certain map, and there's a limited amount of flexibility there. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So Am I disappointed that Wargaming has removed tier 10 carries? Yeah, really disappointed. I mean, will I play clan battles? Yeah, probably. I mean, assuming Omni keeps with it, I'll play the Hindenburg. I don't like how Wargaming removed the carriers. If it was me, I would have probably kept the carriers in and then done that as a first test run. Oh, I've been disconnected. Oh, lovely. Okay, thanks Wargaming. So I would have rather they put carriers in as a first run and tested the first run, because they say because their own words are, if it turns out that we don't like the setup, if it turns out that we don't like how it is without carriers, we'll try and figure them in, or we'll try and weasel them in. I'd rather you kept the carriers in for the first season, see how it goes, and then take it from there. Or why don't you have it so that you've got clan wars, but you can have two particular setups? You can have clan war with carrier, clan war without carrier, but then the population might be really low and the teams playing with carriers could be non-existent, and you only have a couple of elite teams or something. So I can see where that mentality comes from, but I don't like how Wargaming's done it. And then you've got to take into consideration why tier 10. Tier 8 is well established, everyone plays it. I can see how from World of Tanks, tier 10 is the established ranked meta, and that's the established competitive meta, and maybe that's what the Wargaming's pushing to. But tier 10 to me, and I'm not really a destroyer, cruiser, or battleship main player, is quite, not broken, but imbalanced. It needs some tweaking, to say the least. And taking carriers out is a big admission. Well, we don't know how to do this, or we haven't got it right, or we haven't decided to balance it or tweak it, or the relationship between anti-air and planes on the tier 10s is bad and we're going to play without it. And that really bugs me. And I know I'm not visibly aggravated or swearing or cussing and all that type of stuff like it was perhaps with the Zeppelin movie, but yeah, I'm actually really disappointed as a carrier main that I don't get to play carrier in the tier 10 clan wars, especially since clan wars will take precedence over the ranked game mode, and there won't be another ranked season and probably until next year, 2018. So you're like, oh my god, this is so disappointing. It's so disappointing. But I mean, I am actually still excited for clan wars and the ability to play and get experience for playing competitive elements. So how bad is it? Well, I've been playing the Hindenburg. I've been playing the Hindenburg because it's my least bad tier 10 ship that's not a carrier, and I've just been experimenting with it. But I really think Wargaming should have done better, and I really feel that by taking carriers out, they've made it worse, because the game mode, the gameplay will degenerate because they don't have to worry about planes. It's like taking out a huge pillar of the game. Don't worry about this. Imagine if you took away destroyers, or you took away battleships. The whole mechanics of the game shifts and changes. And if you do that in a competitive scenario where it's hyper-organized, that's just, oh, it's bad. So bad. Oh, I'm so angry. I need to go eat some ice cream. Anyway, this is it for the short video. Stay tuned, because we're getting a new Graf Zeppelin with deep dive torpedoes, so we'll do a video on that in a few days. Thanks for watching, and hopefully Wargaming will do something about this carrier nonsense, or hopefully it won't be as bad as I think it is, but it probably will be. Anyway, goodbye guys, and I'll see you next time.